When a woman is deeply in love, she doesn't need to announce it to the world with grand declarations or dramatic expressions. Instead, her love reveals itself in the stillness between words, in the subtleties of her behavior, and in the way she shows up for the person who has touched her soul. Love, in its truest form, is not about spectacle or performance. It's about the quiet certainty that drives her to choose him again and again, even when no one is watching. That's the kind of love that speaks in actions, not noise. It's the kind of love that creates transformation, not confusion. And when he learns how to recognize it, it changes the way he receives love forever. She begins to show this love in the way she listens. Not just hearing his words, but absorbing them. She starts to remember the little details, not because she has to, but because she wants to. His favorite song, the way he likes his coffee, the story he told once about his childhood. These things matter to her now. They become part of her emotional landscape, and while he might not notice right away, he'll start to feel it in the way she anticipates his needs, the way she prepares for his comfort without him having to ask, the way she becomes aware of his energy even before he speaks. Another way this silent certainty emerges is through her presence. When she's with him, she's fully there. Her phone is away, her distractions are silenced, and her energy is focused. She creates space for him not only physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Her presence becomes a sanctuary, a safe space where he doesn't need to pretend, fix, or impress. He can simply be, and she will hold that space with grace. That kind of attention isn't given lightly. It means something. It's her way of saying, without words, "You matter more than anything else right now." And love begins to reflect in the way she supports his growth. A woman in love does not stay silent when she sees him limiting himself. She becomes both his mirror and his cheerleader. When he doubts himself, she reminds him of who he is. When he gets off track, she doesn't criticize. She redirects, gently but powerfully. She wants to see him thrive because his success feels like her own. And the incredible part is, she doesn't do this out of obligation. She does it from a place of deep connection because love makes her invested. It turns his future into something that intertwines with her own. There is also an emotional openness that begins to take root when she's deeply in love. This doesn't mean she's always cheerful or unbothered. Love isn't about perfection. In fact, it's in the moments where she lets him see her fears, her insecurities, her doubts, that the depth of her love becomes visible. She allows herself to be real, and that takes courage, because for a woman who has been hurt, letting someone see behind the mask is a risk. If she begins to trust him with her vulnerability, it's not accidental, it's deliberate. It means she believes he's emotionally safe. That's not something she gives easily. That's something earned by consistency, integrity, and presence. And then there's the way she starts to shift her priorities. When a woman falls deeply in love, she doesn't lose herself. If it's healthy love, she expands herself. She starts to make room in her life, not out of pressure, but from a genuine desire to integrate him into her world. Her schedule changes, not because he demands it, but because she wants to see him. Her dreams start to include him, not because she's dependent, but because she sees partnership as a multiplier of her purpose. This shift doesn't look like sacrifice. It looks like alignment, because when someone fits into your soul, making room for them doesn't feel like effort. It feels like destiny stepping forward. Love like this isn't loud. It doesn't need constant reassurance. It doesn't look like clinging or controlling or chasing. It looks like grounded energy. It looks like peace in her eyes when she sees him walk through the door. It looks like softness in her voice when she says his name. It looks like the calm in the chaos when he's around, because his presence stabilizes her heart. Love, when it is real and deep and healthy, creates stillness in the soul, and a woman who feels that kind of love doesn't need to say it every moment. Her entire being radiates it. The power in recognizing this lies in the ability to respond, not react. If he is awake to these signs, he doesn't need to second-guess her affection. He simply needs to be present, to honor it, to hold it with the same sacred energy with which it is being given. Because love isn't found in words alone, it's etched into her patterns, her responses, her care, her stillness, her willingness to simply show up and stay, can hold more meaning than 1,000 words because energy never lies. Words can be rehearsed, manipulated, softened, or exaggerated, but a single genuine act born from pure emotion speaks a language the soul can't ignore. When a woman is deeply in love, it may not be through endless verbal declarations or dramatic romantic gestures that she shows it. Instead, it often appears in one moment, one choice, one quiet sign that holds the full weight of her feelings. And when he's aware, when he's emotionally attuned, he'll catch it. He'll see it in the way her eyes pause a little longer on him when he's not looking. He'll feel it in the way she waits just a little longer for him to speak his truth. That one act, though seemingly small, is a window into everything she's feeling but hasn't yet said. The most telling sign often arrives in the moment she decides to let him in, not just into her life, but into the private corners of her heart that have been closed for a long time. That one yes, when he invites her to talk late into the night, that one time she lets her guard down and shows her pain without the armor, that is the sign, and it is more powerful than an "I love you" said too soon or too easily. When she lets him see the parts of her she usually hides, she's revealing a truth that words could never express. I trust you with what I fear the most. That kind of vulnerability doesn't come from obligation. It comes from deep emotional resonance. It's not rehearsed, it's instinctive, it bypasses logic, and it only shows up when love has quietly grown roots. It's in that powerful moment when she chooses presence over pride. Maybe they had a disagreement, maybe things felt distant, but then she chooses to lean in, not walk away. She texts first, she calls just to hear his voice. She shows up not because she's weak, but because her love is stronger than her ego. That action, that single choice to keep the connection alive, carries an emotional depth words can never touch. It says, "You matter more to me than winning an argument." It says, "I'd rather understand you than punish you." It's one act, but it shifts everything. There's also that moment, often unnoticed, when she begins to change how she interacts with others because of how she feels about him. Maybe she turns down an invitation she'd normally accept. Maybe she becomes more protective of her energy, of her time, because she's beginning to prioritize a bond that now feels sacred. That single shift in behavior, subtle yet intentional, reveals where her heart is moving. She's making room for something bigger than just herself, and she's doing it without expecting him to ask for it. That's not a sacrifice, that's a sign. A sign that love is taking root in the decisions she makes every day. One of the most profound signs, though, is when she begins to see a future with him, and not only see it, but speak on it in a quiet, forward-facing way. She might mention a trip she'd like to take, not alone, but with him. She may speak about holidays next year, or what kind of house feels like home, or even mention children or career choices that subtly include him in her vision. She isn't forcing it, she isn't locking him into anything, but that forward vision is a reflection of an internal emotional decision. She's not just in love, she's beginning to align her life around the love she feels. One mention, one vision cast out into the future, and he'll know she's serious about this. She sees me in her tomorrow. And it can be as simple as the way she reacts to his pain. When a man is hurting, uncertain, or broken in some way, a woman who loves him deeply won't just offer comfort, she'll absorb part of his pain and carry it with him. Her voice softens, her energy becomes still, her entire being shifts from independent self to sacred partnership. She's no longer just observing, she's with him in that moment. That sign, that switch, is everything. It tells him she's not here for the good times alone. She's emotionally available for the moments when things fall apart too. That one moment of care is louder than years of empty romance. These powerful signs often come quietly, unexpectedly. They're not always grand, but they are always true, and their truth lies in how they come from a place deep within her, unfiltered, unrehearsed, and deeply aligned with how she feels. She may not even realize she's doing it. But when she does, her body language, her tone, her behavior, all of it, will begin to move in harmony with her heart. He doesn't have to chase for meaning or dig for clarity. He only needs to notice, because one powerful sign from a woman in love is enough to shift everything. It speaks for her heart, for her soul, and for all the feelings she may never say aloud. Overcoming the fear of yes is the beginning of all change, because within that one word lies the power to rewrite the story of your life. Yes isn't just a sound, it's a decision, a permission slip to rise above doubt, to stretch beyond pain, to finally let go of the old identity that clings to fear, trauma, and resistance. And when a woman is deeply in love, but has been through enough emotional storms to build walls around her heart, that moment when she says yes is not casual, it's not impulsive, it's transformative. Because it means she's finally overriding the voices in her mind that say love is unsafe, that closeness is dangerous, that men cannot be trusted. One yes holds the force of 1,000 internal battles fought and won. For a woman who's used to guarding her heart, saying yes to love again can feel like walking through fire barefoot. She may crave connection, but she's also terrified of what happens if she lets her guard down and history repeats itself. Her nervous system remembers every betrayal, every manipulation, every time someone took her softness and twisted it. So her instinct is to say no, to protect herself, no to being vulnerable, no to expressing her emotions, no to letting someone in too close. But love, when it is offered gently and consistently, creates space for a new possibility to emerge, and slowly she begins to consider it. She begins to imagine what it might feel like to say yes. Just this once, to trust, to try, to allow herself to be seen not through the lens of past pain, but through the eyes of a man who actually sees her. This isn't about fairy tale, romance, or idealized relationships. This is about inner work, about healing, about courage. Saying yes is her soul signaling that she's ready to evolve. It means she's no longer willing to stay small, scared, or silent. It means she's willing to move past emotional survival and into emotional freedom. And often it takes just one moment, one gesture from him, one emotionally safe experience, one intentional act of consistency to push her past that tipping point. That's when the yes happens, quietly, perhaps. Maybe not even spoken out loud, but it shows up in her behavior, in her energy, in her willingness to engage. She begins to reach out more often, not because she's dependent, but because she's no longer paralyzed by fear. She's leaning into connection rather than pulling away from it. She begins to share thoughts and emotions she once buried, because she now believes they will be received with care. That yes to emotional expression is a monumental shift, especially for someone who has learned to suppress and self-protect, and for him, recognizing that moment is everything. It is not the time to question or downplay it. It's the time to honor it, to match her courage with presence, to create a container where that yes can grow into something unshakable. There's also the mental shift that occurs in her self-perception. When she says yes to love, she is not just accepting someone else, she's choosing to accept herself as someone worthy of being loved. That shift is subtle but sacred, because for years, perhaps she saw herself as too much, too broken, too guarded. Now, by saying yes, she is undoing every internal story that told her love was something she had to earn, chase, or fear. She begins to show up differently, straighter spine, softer eyes, more open heart. Not because of who he is, but because of how she's allowing herself to feel around him. That's when everything begins to align. Sometimes the yes isn't about starting something new, it's about staying. Staying in the hard conversations, staying when things get uncertain, staying when her triggers scream for her to run. That kind of yes is the highest level of emotional mastery. It's not about comfort, it's about commitment. She begins to realize that love isn't the absence of pain, but the willingness to stay present in it, to work through it, to transmute it. That's the yes that changes destinies, because once she sees that love doesn't require perfection, only intention, she becomes unstoppable. And it's not always him that she's saying yes to. Sometimes it's to herself, to her intuition, to her dreams, to her inner child who still believes in magic. The moment she says yes to becoming the version of herself that love has been waiting for, her entire frequency shifts. She begins to attract different experiences, different conversations, different results, because a yes isn't just emotional, it's energetic. It reshapes how she thinks, how she feels, how she moves through the world. And when that shift happens within her, it also reflects in how she shows up for him. She becomes more available, more nurturing, more expressive, not from obligation, but from overflow. And yet, it's important to understand that this process isn't linear. Some days she'll feel wide open, other days she'll regress into old fears, but every time she chooses to return to yes, to return to openness instead of shutdown, to growth instead of defense, she reclaims more of her power. That is the work of love. That is the process of transformation. One moment, one decision, one sacred yes. This is how new lives are born from old wounds. Your emotional vibration attracts what you feel worthy of, not what you simply wish for. At every moment, you are broadcasting an energetic frequency, and that frequency is being matched by your circumstances, relationships, and the people who show up in your life. When a woman is deeply in love but battling inner resistance, unhealed wounds, lingering doubts, buried self-worth issues, her ability to fully express or even receive love becomes blocked. It doesn't mean the love isn't real. It means the internal permission to experience it has not yet been fully granted. The heart can be open, but if the mind still holds onto unworthiness, the love that's being offered will feel foreign, temporary, or even suspicious. When she's around someone whose energy creates safety, consistency, and emotional grounding, her vibration starts to rise in subtle, powerful ways. She begins to recalibrate, not because he's saving her, but because the energy he brings into her space mirrors a new version of her that she's only beginning to believe she can become. The emotional resonance she feels when he's present begins to soften the walls she built out of necessity. She starts to feel like she doesn't have to perform to be valued. She doesn't have to shrink to be accepted. She doesn't have to chase to be kept. That shift in how she experiences herself in his presence is the beginning of a new vibration being born within her, and that's when the real change begins. Her sense of worthiness begins to evolve. The woman who once felt like she had to earn love through overgiving, proving, or fixing now starts to experience love as something she's allowed to receive without effort. This is not a logical realization, it's energetic. It settles into her body. She starts to breathe differently. She begins to take up space with more confidence. She becomes emotionally present in ways she never could before, simply because the energy around her reflects back something she has long denied. You are enough as you are. And when she begins to believe that, her entire life begins to shift in ways that ripple beyond the relationship. Her voice gets stronger, not louder, but clearer. She starts to express needs and desires without apologizing for them. She no longer guesses whether she's being too much or too emotional. Instead, she begins to trust that her emotions are valid, her needs are important, and her presence is valuable. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. That's what happens when her emotional vibration rises from fear to trust, from scarcity to abundance, from anxiety to presence. This emotional shift is deeply spiritual, even if it's playing out in the most human moments, conversations, gestures, simple daily interactions. And the beauty of it is that the man who inspires this shift may not even realize the impact he's having. He's not trying to fix her. He's simply showing up in his own aligned energy, and that energy is activating something powerful within her. As her worthiness increases, so does her discernment. She stops tolerating behaviors that drain her or confuse her. She becomes more protective of her peace. She may begin to walk away from patterns that once kept her stuck, not out of anger, but from a deep knowing that she's now vibrating on a new level. That new level isn't about ego, it's about energy. It's about the realization that love isn't supposed to hurt, manipulate, or fragment her. Love is supposed to elevate her, to create stillness inside her chaos, to make her feel seen even in silence. And once she has felt that kind of love, once she's allowed herself to match that frequency, there is no going back. Her connection to him begins to shift as well, not in intensity, but in purity. She's no longer loving him from a place of fear, neediness, or dependence. She's loving him from overflow, from presence, from a place where she feels safe enough to give without losing herself. That's the vibration that sustains healthy love. It's not about being perfect. It's about being energetically honest. About showing up without masks, without manipulation, and without trying to manage every outcome. And when two people are vibrating on that same frequency, when they both feel worthy, seen, and safe, love becomes magnetic. It begins to draw experiences, opportunities, and moments that reflect the depth of their emotional alignment. This emotional frequency also affects how she handles challenges. When conflict arises, she doesn't immediately shut down, retreat, or lash out. Instead, she approaches it with a centeredness that comes from inner security. She's not reacting, she's responding, because when you feel emotionally worthy, you don't panic in the face of disagreement. You don't abandon yourself to be accepted. You stand rooted in your truth while staying open to connection. That is emotional maturity. That is spiritual intelligence. That is the vibration that attracts lasting love, not fleeting intensity. She starts to attract people who match her new vibration, friends who respect her boundaries, opportunities that align with her values, and a partner who reflects the love she's learned to cultivate within herself. Her life no longer feels like a struggle to prove or earn. It begins to unfold with a natural flow, not because everything is perfect, but because her frequency has changed, and that change alters her magnetism. Her yes to emotional growth, to inner peace, to her own worthiness, is the signal that invites the universe to match her energy with people and experiences that reflect it back. Destiny shifts the moment you accept you deserve love, because everything in your life begins to align with what you believe you are worthy of receiving. For many people, especially those who have endured emotional pain, rejection, or abandonment, there's a subconscious belief that love must be earned, chased, or suffered for. But when a woman begins to feel a sense of deep, unconditional love from someone who shows up with consistency, safety, and presence, something profound happens inside her. It isn't just about what he's doing for her. It's about what she starts to realize about herself in response to his energy. She begins to question the old narrative that told her she was hard to love or only lovable under certain conditions. And slowly, that belief begins to crumble, making space for a completely new destiny to be written. The shift is internal first. She may not announce it. She may not even be fully aware of it at first, but her energy changes, her decisions change, her emotional responses become more rooted, and all of it begins with one quiet but powerful realization. I don't have to fight to be loved. I only need to allow it. That shift from survival mode to receiving mode is one of the greatest transformations a person can go through, and it's often triggered by a single, pivotal connection. A relationship that mirrors back to her the value she's always had, even when she couldn't see it herself. When she's in the presence of someone who honors her, not for what she can do, but for who she is, she starts to remember her true self. She begins to reclaim the parts of her she silenced to stay safe. Her laughter becomes more authentic, her softness returns, her creativity opens up. She begins to live from her core, not her fear. That's not because someone completed her, it's because someone reminded her that she was already whole. And when that wholeness is remembered, destiny starts to respond in ways that seem like miracles, but are really just reflections of her elevated self-belief. The acceptance of love doesn't mean that pain disappears or challenges vanish. It means she no longer sees herself as undeserving of joy. She no longer disqualifies herself from the kind of emotional depth she once admired in others. She doesn't walk through the world apologizing for wanting more, fearing she'll be too much. Instead, she begins to embody a different energy, one that silently says, I am ready, and the universe responds not to her words, but to the energy she's emitting. It opens doors, brings in people who align with that vibration, and clears out the distractions that once held her back. She becomes magnetic, not in the superficial sense of attention, seeking, or external beauty, but in the soulful sense of someone who is deeply connected to her essence. And it's not just romantic love that she attracts, it's purpose, it's peace, it's clarity. The moment she accepts that she is worthy of love, she also begins to recognize that she is worthy of boundaries, of healing, of dreams that felt too big before. Her entire reality starts to expand because her perception of herself has expanded. She stops settling. She stops shrinking. She stops choosing people who keep her trapped in cycles of confusion and pain. And that is when her destiny takes a new shape, not by chance, but by choice. The man who helps awaken this shift may never fully understand the magnitude of his presence. It's not necessarily what he says, it's how he is, how he looks at her without judgment, how he listens without interrupting, how he stays when her emotions get messy, how he doesn't flinch when she expresses a part of herself she was once told to hide. That kind of love doesn't force her to change, it inspires her to remember, and in that remembering, her relationship to the future evolves. She no longer sees it as something to fear or fight against. She starts to believe it can actually work in her favor, that it's safe to hope again, that love doesn't have to be a battlefield, it can be home. She begins to dream differently. She starts imagining a life that includes not just survival, but fulfillment. Her goals become bolder, her voice becomes stronger, her vision becomes clearer, and all of this is connected to one choice, the choice to accept that she is lovable as she is, that her past does not define her capacity for future joy, that her trauma is not her identity, that love is not something to resist, but to rise into. The moment that truth settles into her being, the story she tells about herself changes, and with that change comes a ripple effect that touches every area of her life. She starts showing up in her relationships with more clarity. She no longer entertains emotional games or ambiguous intentions. She begins to speak from a place of knowing rather than needing. Her presence becomes grounding, not just for herself, but for those around her. That's the power of destiny unfolding in real time. It's not a flash of fate or an overnight miracle. It's a slow, steady transformation that begins when love is no longer viewed as a reward, but as a reflection of her truest self. And as that self takes the lead, the path in front of her starts to look very different from where she began.